Let's talk about it.
Hello and welcome to Thicc Radio, the podcast where we talk about gaining, feedism, and everything in its orbit. I'm James.
And I'm Tim. So let's get into it. Today we welcome to the show for the first time. Today we've got Jermaine.
Hello, everybody.
Hey, Jermaine, how you doing, baby?
I'm good. Just
Good.
living the day. Living the day.
Living the day. Now, listeners, of course, you cannot see, but Jermaine, being such the busy bee that he is actually in transit. Well, not necessarily right this second. He is pulled over. Let's confer there is safety precautions.
I'm on my break.
He's currently on his break, stationary, and is dedicating his time to speak with us today, which is fabulous. And well, Jermaine, you're currently on break doing what job? What is it you do for work?
I am a OTR truck driver, so I drive all 48 states in the U.S.
Fabulous. And OTR, that's over the road, right?
Yes, that's over the road.
And that means you cross state borders?
Yes, cross state borders. If I had my passport and a dual-plated truck, I would cross international borders.
Ooh. And that would be like OTB over the border or something, right?
No, it'd still be OTR. It'd be just going into Mexico and going into Canada, get freight. I usually drop off. We usually have drop yards over on our side of the border, not far, and then we swap trailers.
Gotcha. And just for my own frame of reference, like what state would you technically be based in? Like what's the state that you call home?
Arizona is still home. I receive everything there. That's still home. But I mean, I can take my home calls anywhere in the country. If I want to go to Minnesota, I can be like, hey, I want to go to Minnesota for 4 days. And then they'll get me there.
Nice. I mean, that sounds kind of convenient to be like, listen, I've got a little someone I want to meet up with in a random state or territory that's accessible. How about you put me on there?
Done that a couple times.
Oh, there we go. But,
Well, let me know the next time you're coming through Cleveland.
Definitely will. Yeah, I'm actually going to be in Toledo end of this month to visit my uncle and my step aunt and my second cousin.
There you go.
So,
but Jermaine, you reached out to us to have this conversation because being this OTR trucker, you're that person who's living life on the road. Yep. And because you're fat, it would be Rocky Road,
Jiggly Road.
I do love some Rocky Road. But no, you work this almost gainer fantasy kind of job, really. I'm sure, back in my teen years, I read a fiction about some, fresh out of high school hitchhiker wanting to go to LA where all the cute, thin surfer beach boys were, and some fat beer-bellied trucker pulls over and says, "Get in here, boy," and I'll... And then because they hit every pit stop from wherever they start to the coast, by the time he gets there, he's just a fat bubba like the trucker dude and doesn't pass it off. So, I see the allure. I see the appeal. I mean, as a first point of call then, have you always done this kind of work? Or is this sort of like a new industry you found yourself in?
Kind of new. Before this, at the start of the whole pandemic stuff, I left my job at Walmart and started working at FedEx Express as a courier. So a little bit more active, a little bit getting out of the truck and walking up to driveways, stuff like that, handling packages. But now with the decline of COVID and everything, I wanted, and other financial and personal stuff, I was like, I'm going to go live off the road. And I'm single, I'm young, and want to travel. So it worked out. And the company I worked for fronted the money and paid the thousands of dollars for my CDL. So it worked out great.
Love it. And I mean, you mentioned being young. How old are you?
I am just turned 26 actually this past August. So I started this when I was 25. Actually, I graduated CDL Academy last year, tomorrow. So
oh, wow. Happy.
So I've been doing this for a year. Yep, and I just hit my 100,000 miles yesterday.
Oh wow, trucking a lot,
So
ain't you? I mean,
yeah,
so I'm curious to know, like, what's the major difference, would you say, between gaining, basically living in a truck versus gaining from the comfort of your own home?
it's harder to have the means to cook as well as the healthier food options, because I mean, I have like a mini fridge and that's what I have to live off of. And then I actually bought a chest freezer, so I have a little bit more options of food to have than always having to just eat out at like McDonald's or a Popeyes, because that's at every truck stop too across the country, or Wendy's, which I love me some Wendy's. But just the fact that I can't be like, okay, I want to cook a big old thing of pasta. Can't do that. Or cook like 3 things of steaks. Can't do that either. So, I mean, I can. I have a Ninja grill, but it's harder. It's a lot harder to do that and keep the truck clean and everything. So,
But I feel like I don't know a ton of truckers, but the few that I have known, like some of the cabs can be pretty decked out, right? Like some of them can have enough space for even like a little
Kitchenette.
like propane stove, right?
so there are with Tim living here in the States, there is a company called Reliable. They actually do get what are called super sleepers. So I'm in a 84-inch sleeper. So from my seat where I'm sitting right now to the back of the sleeper is my living space. They actually have the longer ones to where it's like a convection cooktop. So it's like they have special pots and pans to show like, hey, there's something here we can cook. So they have those. They have ones that have the microwave oven. So there are those like that. But I have an Instapot, and I also have a Ninja all-in-one grill. So it's a grill, air fryer, and oven. So that helps me cook and not eat out as much. But I can only cook so much at a time and store so much at a time. So
It certainly sounds like there's a negotiation that has to go on, especially when you live your life cooking, well, you live your life cooking regular portions, and then you live your life cooking gainer portions, and that's a little bit more.
yeah,
But you live your life cooking food in a certain type of way where you can eyeball it, like, oh, 1 onion, 1 bit of gut, this, that, throw it together, makes this much. I can put it in my fridge, whoop-de-woo, move into the truck. Suddenly, access to those fruit and veg becomes a bit more difficult. Having the facilities to cook it becomes more difficult. To store it becomes more difficult. So I can certainly acknowledge that there's that challenge to adapt. And it does make sense why so many truckers wind up the size that they do, not necessarily because they're cooking, but because they're having to obligatorily eat out so much. But hey, I suppose that's something you have to consider, like, throughout that process, right? Like, do they make you aware of things like that, or is that just kind of left up to the surprise of when you get there?
Well, with my company being the largest in North America, I work for Swift. They do have a really good guy. I forget his name. He is like our health and wellness specialist. So he does videos and stuff like that. There's another guy. His name's Garcia. He cooks like no other. Some of the meals he makes are just spectacular. But it comes to the fact that yeah, we can't just pull off at a grocery store and get what we need. We buy in bulk to last us the week after our days off and stuff like that. But I mean, a lot of the truck stops here, Loves in particular, they do have a good selection, not of vegetables, but a lot of fruits. So that's the healthier side. So I'm not just snacking on Muddy Buddies all day. I can eat some grapes, bananas, apples, stuff like that.
It's interesting. It brings back a conversation, Tim, you and I have had before, probably on the podcast. Listeners, if you know which episode, then good for you. Someone actually asked me once, like, do you remember that one episode where you said, and I'm like, no. No, because we've done a few now, and I can't
You
remember
guys have done a lot.
which episode we talked about what on. Um, but what I was going to say was we've talked about this before, that there's a real need to have a conversation on different diets within gaming. Diet conscious gaming. That was the episode, season 1. Check it out. So there needs to be a conversation on types of food for different living situations. So, for example, someone like yourself, I can imagine having a chest or a crate that you could fill with non-perishables, cans of chopped tomatoes, sheets of pasta and lasagna, or like whatever else, those things that are just there and good to go. And then the perishables are those things that are just quick and easy that you can pick up most places. Your milk, cream, butter, your simple fruit and your simple veg, your onion, your potato, and just figuring out what diverse meals can we make with this selection. Maybe really leaning on that spice rack that you could buy and like have again in that same box to be like, how are we going to make this shit taste different to everything else? It's Asian pasta. How do you know it's Asian pasta? Because we added a whole load of turmeric and smoked paprika. It's like it's figuring out how to do those types of bits and pieces. I think this calls for a cookbook, Tim. I think that's the sign from the goddess Hecate.
I agree.
We must make a cookbook.
You're invoking Hecate for this.
I'm invoking Hecate. Do you want me to? I'll speak in tongue. Shunda hada bada bada shunda bada. Just if you like tongue, I like tongue. Do you like tongue? No. Anyways, so we did want to ask a question on like your ability to cook and prepare food. So you mentioned that you've got a Ninja grill. And was it a convection oven, or did you say the other types of trucks have the convection oven?
So the other trucks, I'm in a standard. When you come to America, I'm in a standard truck you see all over the road. I don't have the big sleeper, but I have a Instapot, a microwave, and then my Ninja oven or my Ninja grill is an oven, dehydrator, roaster, air fryer, all in one. So I have a lot of options for that one.
Okay, it's just finding access to that food. And I think that brings up a good point. Like, are you familiar with the concept of like a food desert and a food oasis? Have you heard of these terms before?
I kind of never in that aspect.
So
I know a food oasis is like a lot of food options and a lot of different options to get for the most part.
Right.
And then a food desert would be the exact opposite of that. It would be like, well, not necessarily that there's not because the fast food is everywhere, but like not quality food, like the only food available is the processed, fried, grilled crap that is not going to do anything for you.
Yeah.
It's a conversation that's come up a lot, especially in terms of things like gentrification. And again, disadvantaging minority groups, people of color and black people especially, because when you look at the kind of racial spread of people in areas where there are a food oasis, it's high white population. And places where it tends to be more of a food desert, and places where therefore there tends to be low nutrition, issues of diabetes and health issue in relation and conjunction to food, heavy black populations. And again, for listeners, these are things that are out there on the internet. As gainers, as people who are invested in food and growth, we need to be more aware of. So please get you up on some reading. Go and do that. Yeah. But is this something that they talk to you about in preparation for? You're going to be on the road, you're going to be in transit. There may be times where you do have access or don't have access to certain foods.
No, not so much the company, but definitely like your mentors. Like my mentor, he's done this for 25 years. So he gave me a lot of the tips and tricks. One of my friends, he's done this for 30 years. And he cooks every day. He doesn't eat out unless he's just beat after driving 11 hours. So not so much as a company, and some do, but my company hasn't. It's more meeting other truckers and talking, getting information, and just sharing when you're parked at a truck stop or doing laundry or waiting for a shower.
So it definitely sounds like there is a sense of it definitely sounds to me like there's a sense of community amongst people who are in your profession of trucking. Is that right?
Oh, most definitely. Most definitely. they pick on us, especially for my company, because the rep that other people give us. But at the end of the day, we're all here doing the same job, and all watch out and take care of each other and share wisdom, because I don't know everything. I've only been doing this for almost a year now, but there's people who've been doing this their entire lives, and I take what they say, unless they're just rude. I take it with a grain of salt. If they're not rude, then I take it and I adapt and add it into the knowledge that I'm building day by day.
So I'm curious about something. This is not on topic. This is just a curiosity of mine. And if it's a little too personal, then, you by all means, you don't have to answer. But because I have known some truckers, I have heard a lot of stories about truck stops. I've heard a lot of stories about certain things that go on at truck stops. And I'm just curious, is that, in your experience, do you find that there's kind of a lot of like DL gay sex going on in truck stops?
Not that I know of. I mean, granted, probably in the showers, people probably have hookups in different places. I mean, I know I have a couple that I've known and made friends with, but they are friends and they come over when I'm in town.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I've never witnessed it. I mean, I thought the thing Tim was talking about were what we call lot lizards, basically prostitutes.
Oh no, I mean, I know that happens because I have friends that actually do that, so I was just wondering if that was,
pause, non-American here.
It's basically it's because I know a couple of gay guys that love to frequent rest stops and truck stops for the fact that they're hoping to get action from a trucker, because it is kind of a common gay fantasy to be into a guy who's, it's like a blue collar job. It's like, they tend to look at truck drivers as being more masculine, and they kind of want rough trades, so that's where they go.
Yeah,
they hang out in those places.
I've gotten that a couple times. I mean, since I've been in the truck, I've probably had 5, but they're normally regulars. They're not randoms. There's people that I've talked to for weeks before I go out there or something like that. And the first time was like, I've always had a thing for truckers. I'm like, oh, okay, well,
then, I mean, also, can I just say, Tim, I know you made a joke about, like, a giraffe. Like, who the fuck is a giraffe? Like, just a really tall gay guy. Like, we got lizards. I didn't know we had fucking lizards in the fucking gay animal kingdom.
So they're mainly more, not so much on the gay aspect, or more on the female aspect. Like, if you go on Google and look up, like, a lot lizard sticker, it's literally a picture of, like, or a silhouette of a woman. You see, like, side boob, you see side butt, and then it has the horns and a tail.
It's kind of like the mud flap, the naked woman on the mud flap, like,
yes.
Right? Yeah.
Yes, yeah, it's basically like that. And those are druggies, junkies. I mean, they're going to be at every truck stop for the most part, but I mean, you got to know what you're looking for, and I'm not looking for that. I'm usually on Grommr or Grindr, and it's people that I've talked to, or I have their phone number now.
Fair enough. I mean, as a point of curiosity, have you ever had to reject said a lot lizard? Rejecting her and gone, excuse me, ma'am, I am a homosexual. I don't want this.
Nope. As soon as I park in a truck stop, unless I'm taking my dog out for a walk or I'm going to go either get food or shower, my head is down or in my phone, walk into the truck. I'm not looking.
My word. I do want to ask, because I know we touched on the sort of food desert, food oasis thing for a short time. In this past year, obviously, I imagine it's been quite a learning curve for you, and you have mentioned, like, there's that mentorship, which, Tim, are we not always on about mentorship? We're
always talking about mentorship, yeah.
Always talking about mentorship on this damn podcast. What advice do you have? And I'm not necessarily saying for, like, people who are truckers, though for people who are truckers applicable, but for just anyone who maybe lives in a food desert, what is the best piece of advice you could give to them in terms of sourcing better food or accounting for that? What's just the best piece of navigational advice you could offer for that?
That one's kind of hard. I mean, if you're in a food desert, I mean, when you go to a food oasis, try to stock up on as much as you can that you know is not going to go bad. I mean, I have underneath my bed, I have a bunch of perishables, especially coming into the winter time. And we all know the weather up in the North US can get really, really bad. So I'm fully stocked up on that, but I don't really have anything on that one. I tried thinking about it, but it's nothing that really ever came to mind other than just when you're somewhere that has the food and the what you're looking for, get what you can as long as you can afford it. Don't try to get stuff you can't afford and put yourself in a bad situation.
I feel like, as much as you want to indulge as a gainer on the road and eat at every greasy spoon that you come across, like you said, there are ways of being smart about it too. So it's not just a ton of salt, cholesterol, and all the other crap that goes into that processed food. Like you said, you have a dehydrator. So like you can dehydrate fruit and it's not going to lose any of its nutrition if it's dehydrated. Apples tend to last forever because of the waxy skin that they have. Things like bananas, tomatoes, those are going to rot pretty quickly. But I mean, like, if you know that you've got a perishable food item, just try to get to that first or dehydrate it if you have a dehydrator.
Yeah. I usually do last time when I went to the Sam's Club when I was in Toledo, I got the frozen, the freeze-dried apple slices, because it's just a box, it's underneath my bunk, and I can grab a couple out, and that's my snack for the day.
Just whenever. It's a good shout. And just for the record, people, 100 grams of banana chips is 519 calories. I mean, this is something we wanna pick up again on an episode. We'd love to speak to someone who's like maybe a vegan gainer, someone who really has to like find ways to get their calories in through certain other means of styles of eating. But baby, there are lots of ways to get your calories in without having to go to McDonald's. There are lots of ways that I'm the butter queen, and I know, like, I lean on butter, but there are lots of ways to add your calories without butter.
I keep hearing about nuts. Everybody goes on and on about nuts, like almonds, peanuts, pistachios. Problem is like, I don't know why, but nuts are so fucking expensive in a grocery store.
Oh yeah,
it's like I don't understand why. Like, if they're one of the most abundant food groups on earth, why do they charge so much friggin' money for like a bag of honey roasted almonds or something?
I mean, the processing is difficult because most nuts and legumes I think it's the group that they come under. Most processing is actually quite difficult, and I think it's either almonds or not pistachios. I think it's almonds. There's basically major farms in India and a lot of South Asia where these are produced, and I think they actually come in an initial shell that has arsenic as a part of it. And obviously, if you've got a bag and you're shelling them, like, that's not a problem, but they hire people to shell these for a living, and it eats away at their fingers, and low-key arsenic fumes causes them to go blind. So
yeah.
Okay, well, that's really depressing, because that means that American companies like, Blue Diamond, who's like famous for almonds, or Planters, are causing sweatshop workers to go blind and have deteriorated fingers. So like, then if we buy the nuts, aren't we just perpetuating the cycle?
I mean, it's difficult because, one, if you don't buy the nuts, someone else will. But also, two, in a lot of these regions, because it's a little bit like that whole commentary on like Amazon warehouses. Like, they build them so big that one warehouse becomes the source of income for the entire town. Everybody works there. And therefore, when they shut that warehouse down, it's devastating. The town is abandoned because everyone lost their jobs in one fell swoop. Everyone has to move. Same sort of thing with these plantations. Everyone there relies on that as a form of work, and when you take that away, it doesn't actually provide them with a lot of other opportunities. It's quite the gamble in some instances. But, I don't believe that's all nuts and legumes, to be clear. But most are produced in South America, in South Asia. Shipping costs, the extra roasting, the extra processing that goes on, all those types of bits and pieces. And it makes sense when it all eventually ticks up. But things like that, bags of nuts, they are always cheaper at a Whole Foods. Actually, no, you have a company called Whole Foods there, right?
Yeah, we have like Whole Foods. We have friggin' Trader Joe's where everything is jacked up to ridiculously high prices. It's like,
but it's so good.
Okay, it might be good, but at the same time, like if you, I mean, and I'm speaking from a place of privilege. I don't have children. It's just me and my boyfriend. Like those are we're just providing for each other, really. I can't imagine trying to raise like 3 children on an extremely limited food budget.
So there is a place, at least in Perth, I'm not sure how common it is in other states, but it's called Spudshed. And as a student, it is the absolute best fucking place to go. Because it is basically a gigantic warehouse with like 50 aisles of just bargain basement shit. Fruit and veg, frozens, dairy, tinned food, preservables, everything that is perfectly fine. It's just a little bit dinged or dented. And they
that's like Aldi's here.
But it's not like a grocer's like that. It's more like like a public food market type of thing.
Okay.
But it's done.
There's actually a thing like that out here called Imperfect Foods. It's not a store, but it's like a subscription, and you can shop it every however so often. That's what I used to do before I started this. And it's just harder for me to get that food because I haven't been back to Arizona in like a month and a half.
Fair dues makes it a bit hard. But, perhaps for people living in food deserts, that's a suggestion, is look at these types of food subscription services that maybe are able to deliver you that kind of fresh produce. Looks a little bit wibble wobble, but it's still perfectly fine.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of the conversation on nuts, that is where I would get nuts back home, because you could buy a kilo bag for $5. Just cheap as chips, because that's the place to go to get it. Everything is bargain based and cheap. And I do feel like there are places like that around most places, is the kind of vibe I pick up. Sometimes it's a matter of asking the right people and finding that out, but you can sometimes find these types of places. So if you don't know where your local equivalent is, dear listener, maybe it's time to find out. Find out where you can have these opportunities to stock up on non-perishables and good fresh produce when and where you can. In terms of the growth that you've achieved, if I can maybe be a little bit proby here, how much have you gained in the past year? Or is this again difficult to determine?
I want to say I probably gained about 30 pounds.
Not unreasonable. Have you had to experience, as of this stage, the experience of outgrowing your clothing whilst in this role? You have. What has that been like?
Not as hard as I thought it was going to be. I mean, for the most part, unless I am doing a lot more customer interaction, I'm in Crocs, basketball shorts, and a t-shirt. I mean, today, as you guys can see, I'm in my polo. I have my jeans on because I had a lot of customer interaction this morning. And then again, when I get to my final tonight, I'll have a lot of customer interaction. So, but for the most part, I mean, when I'm on home call, I go. Walmart's been a great thing with it being everywhere. They usually carry my size, at least in basketball shorts and pants. For the most other part, for some of the other things I need, I usually go to like Destination XL, or if I'm big and tall stores. Duluth Trading Company's been a great help. They're not everywhere, but they're mainly in the northern parts of the country. So, but it's been on and off. I just had a pair of shorts ripped the other day, and I was a little upset because they were really comfortable shorts.
Oh, I hate that. There's always like, I always call them like old reliable. It's like, for me, it is a pair of basketball shorts. I'm literally wearing them right now. It is the only pant I wear these days, unless I have to go out somewhere fancy and put on a trouser. But it's my old reliable, and if these bad boys went, I would be devastated.
They weren't. I mean, I got them back in June. Yeah, I got them back in June when I got my suit for my cousin's wedding at DXL. They're a pair of golf shorts because they're comfortable, they're breathable. The waistband's a little bit elastic, so it has some give. But yeah, nope, ripped right in the crotch and then kind of just spread. I was like, man.
The devastation. I know how you mentioned that a lot of these places are kind of like northern US. Do you find that maybe accessing clothing when you need it is a little bit more difficult in the south of the US?
No, because DXL's everywhere. It's Duluth is more geared towards the northern part of the country because it's the colder climate and they're more outdoors wear.
Yeah, it's like farm wear, sort of. It's like a lot of sweaters,
Yeah.
overalls, stuff like that.
Yeah, long johns. I just had to buy a pair of long johns with it getting into that time of year. I'm like, oh, I need some long johns.
I want to ask, is there any aspect of working on the road that has come as a surprise to you in the past year?
In what way?
I mean, like, I think a lot of the questions have maybe been probing about how much they maybe warn you beforehand about things or educate you. As you've said, a lot of it just comes from that mentorship on the road experience, people showing you how to account for this on the road lifestyle. But from your experience and your perspective, in terms of what you've come to experience in the past year, what's been the most surprising aspect of life on the road?
The different types of drivers all across the country. And I'm from California and we're horrible drivers, but God, you get up here and some places are. But I mean, just having to overcome the different types of terrain and different loads. Because I mean, right now I'm 43,000 pounds in my trailer. So then that gives the aspects and having to learn how to control a 73-foot long vehicle when other drivers don't give a crap about what you're doing. And then also just having to watch, especially right now in the country, especially up north, it's Animal Crossing season. Deers, moose. Up in Maine, you got turkeys, so I got to watch for turkeys on the road. Stuff like that. Stuff, that's about it. I didn't know how different that was going to be.
Fair enough. I mean, it's interesting, like, and I'm someone who also doesn't drive. I do need to get my license sorted. I intended to do that back in 2020 before everything went to shit. But it's interesting when you think about seasonal shifts on the road.
Yes.
Different styles of drivers on the road, state to state. Like, okay, that's another one. Because there's 48 of your states. Are there any major differences in road rules state to state? I would presume not, but also I presume to learn about America and just those things.
There are.
Oh, there are.
There are. So as truckers, and it might just be my CDL Academy instructor, we refer to California as the communist state of California when it comes to truck driving rules. They are the strictest. We can only go 55 miles an hour while everyone else around us is going 60. Or no, not 60. They're going either 65 or 70. We can only go 55. They're, what we call a bridge law is different. It's the length of our trailer axles from our tractor axle that has to be there. Each state's a little different, but for the most part, California is the only outlier. Some states do have truck speed limits. Like I know some parts of Ohio have one, and Indiana and Illinois do. But for the most part, I mean, it's just signs that you just have to watch. Trucks in right lanes, trucks in left lanes. California is just the worst. That's why I don't go to the West Coast.
Fair enough. Duly noted about the West Coast. And for any of our truckers out there listening, we encourage you to avoid the strict rules of California. Listen, as a final question here, what advice would you give to gainers who work in this industry or even similar industries akin and whatnot? What advice would you give around gaining, navigating those difficulties and trying to be more successful with growth in transit?
I mean, watch what you eat. I mean, every trucker knows that we have to watch out for DOT because we have to get DOT physical and they hold that to really high standards for us. So watch what you eat, take care of yourself at the end of the day, enjoy what you eat, but don't over cholesterol, over processed, overly fried foods, and just be smart really. I mean, if you want to supplement something, I mean, I have a bunch of protein shakes in the truck, so that way I'm not losing out on calories for waking up late in the day and having to get started on the road, or to help supplement the snacks.
Well, Jermaine, this has been an absolute pleasure, baby. Thank you so much for being on.
No problem. Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, where can listeners find you online?
So I am on Instagram as kryptogainer96. I am on Grommr as Gaining Trucker. I believe there's a 96 in there. I'm not 100% sure. I haven't been on Grommr in a minute. And then I am also on TikTok, Jermaine.
Well, thank you so much. And that's a wrap for now here on Thicc Radio. Please remember to like and subscribe, rate us 5 stars, and leave us a good review. If you like this episode, the podcast, or just us in general, share it with your friends and encourage them to tune in. You can find me on Instagram and BeefyFrat at stannnum.
And you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, and BeefyFrat at Thicky Mouse. You can also look us up on TikTok at Thicc Radio, or our website at www.podpage.com/Thicc Radio. If you want to submit a voice note, you can reach us at anchor.fm/Thicc Radio/message. And if you have any questions or ideas for episodes, you can reach us at thiccradio@gmail.com. So until next time, bye, Fats.
Bye, Fats.
Bye, Fats.
Let's talk about it.
Thicc Radio is a Patreon and Anchor app podcast produced by Stan and Thicky Mouse.
Mixed and mastered by Stan.
Our artwork is provided by Lokitsu.
Our theme song is provided by Spotify.